Hello, welcome back to Podcast Heroes. I'm Attila, and with me is
Dom. Hi, hello.
So today we're gonna talk about Battlerite.
That's right.
So Dominic, first things first, what is Battlerite?
Battlerite is an arena brawler. You play in teams of either 2 or 3 against other enemy teams of either the same thing, 2 or 3, and you fight each other until the death. You have 21 heroes that you can pick from. Each hero has its own individual skill set, and once you pick your hero, off you go and off you battle your enemies until there's only one team standing in the ring.
Okay, perfect. As we all know, Battlerite is still in early access. It might come to free-to-play, but the date is not confirmed yet. Mm-hmm. You actually summed it up what Battlerite is so far. Should we just hop over to the gameplay?
Yeah, let's do that. And let me ask you one question in regards of the gameplay. Would you consider Battlerite to be a MOBA?
That's a good question. I don't think it's a MOBA. It has a lot of MOBA elements. Mm-hmm. Definitely, but it's not a MOBA. As you said, it's truly an arena brawler. You really are just fighting. You're not laning, you're not farming, you're not making any strategies regarding push strategies or similar things.
Yeah, because there's nothing to push, right? It's really just an arena to
Because
fight
there's nothing to push. There are no creeps or something, there are no towers or anything like that. All you have is you, your teammates, and the opponents. And yeah, since you just have to fight in this game, the skill is actually a pretty important fact, right? Therefore, you also have to do a lot of skill shots in this game, which is actually the core element.
Yeah, I mean, the entire game is just skill shots. There's no targeted abilities. There's no insta-damage or anything like that. Everything you do is based on your skill, right? You have to aim your shots, you have to lead your shots. You know, the timing has to be right. And I think this is something that makes the game also extremely competitive, don't you think? Because it's absolutely just purely down to your skill.
Exactly, yeah. There's also the fact that there is no mana. There are literally no resources. You only have the cooldowns of your abilities. And you have your ultimates, which actually are able to be thrown out if you have built up enough energy by hitting enemies or collecting energy orbs on the battlefield.
Yeah, exactly. You have to charge those up.
There's a well-known problem with MOBAs nowadays, especially with games with a large hero pool. We are looking at Dota 2 and League of Legends, for example. There are a lot of heroes who are pretty, let's say, OP, and some heroes are actually underpowered. It's of course pretty hard to balance out the whole hero pool because most of the time you have like some kind of specialists doing special kind of things. What's the case with Battlerite? Can you explain that for a second?
Yeah, I mean, we touched it in the beginning. Battlerite at the moment only has 21 heroes, so it doesn't have a hero pool of 100 like you have in Dota or maybe also League of Legends. They have quite a lot. Same with Heroes of the Storm. But with Battlerite, it's much simpler, right? 21 heroes, I think it's easier to balance. And at the moment, in my opinion, they have the balance quite right. And further than that, I think that almost every hero in the hero pool is a viable hero. I don't think there's anything in Battlerite that you would call a shit tier hero. I don't think it exists. If you know how to play a hero, you can be useful with it.
I mean, yeah, exactly. There are the healers, of course, and there are the damage dealers, and there are also the kind of tanks, but you can still be extremely effective, and every hero has, even the healer, have enough damage potential to make the damage. Of course, we shouldn't be played 24/7 like that, but you know what I mean.
No, exactly. Also, building upon that, you can run a setup if you're playing 2v2, or for example, 2 healers, and you can win if you play well, right?
Yeah.
Because you can dish out damage.
I mean, we did it several times, right?
Yeah, exactly. We've done it. You can dish out damage, you can heal yourself. Every hero has an escape mechanism in one way, if that's going invisible or jumping away or blocking damage. So I think every hero in itself is well-rounded. So you can win games with the typical DPS and heal setup. You can win with 2 DPS, you can win with 2 healers, you can win with 2 tanks. If you just play smart. Like we said, everything comes down to your skill.
Which is actually pretty uncommon for games like this.
Totally.
And totally refreshing.
Yeah, I love it because in many games you have, where people kind of settle on a certain meta. They say like, this is how it's supposed to be played. I mean, you can so easily just think outside the box and do fresh things. And with other games, as soon as you pick like an off-meta hero, people will flame you for it. That just doesn't happen here because there's nothing like an off-meta hero, really.
Yeah. Of course, we also have the fact that some heroes are easier to pick up, which is okay, because there should be a different kind of skill ceiling for acquiring the knowledge about a specific hero. because these things keep the game interesting, right? You start out with one hero and you just master him or play him, spam him a lot of times, and someday you will get boring of that one hero and switch to another one and main him. By the way, I really hate the term maining a hero or champ or whatever, but at this game you really can say I'm a Shifu main, because you have to really master that hero, and since there is no meta, like you said, it's totally fine to claim that a specific hero is your main.
Yeah, and you see, I think one thing that we also haven't mentioned yet, I mean, it's very easy to main somebody here because nobody can pick the hero away from you, at least not when you're solo queuing.
Yeah, that's important.
When you just go into the game, you can pick whichever hero you want to play, and then you will be matched up with somebody else randomly. So that's a great thing. So if you're a Shifu main, for example, you can be a Shifu main. If you're just playing solo by yourself, you can always pick the same hero. Nobody will be able to pick it away from you.
There's also the fact that instead of items or similar stuff, we have the Battlerites. These are actually pretty important way are defining the game. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the game is called after this mechanic, right? So the way the Battlerites in this game work is that in the beginning of every round that you play, you get one of 3 options to modify your champion, basically. So these options, they let you alter the skills that you have. So for example, if you have an escape skill, you can empower that skill. You can add an option to it. You can make it stronger. For example, if you have invisibility, that you can be invisible for a longer period of time. Or that your damage shot, for example, does more damage, that it adds damage over time. And these kind of things. So every round, you get the next set of options to further alter your hero to the playstyle that you think is appropriate for this kind of game that you're playing, for the setup that you're playing against. So because you just mentioned there's nothing like items in this game, the way that you change your hero is through the Battlerites.
And we also have to add to this that these Battlerites are actually the same every single round, every single game you play. If you have one specific hero, he will have the same Battlerites to choose as in the game before.
Yeah, the Battlerites, to make it easily understandable, they're like a talent tree. As you have it with other games, if you have it, for example, in Heroes of the Storm or World of Warcraft, if you want to go there. So every round, you follow the same sequence of, let's just call them talents for now.
Which depends on your playstyle, of course, as you mentioned.
Which depends on your playstyle and which depends on the situation. Because, for example, if you see that you have 2 heroes on the other side, which are extremely adept in chasing you down, you might want to go a defensive route. You want to go empower your defense and escape skills.
Exactly, yeah.
Or if you see that the other team is squishy, you may want to dish out more damage. So it really just depends on how you want to play and what you think is appropriate.
Perfect, yeah, exactly. And that's where we come to the matchmaking. The length of the games are pretty short compared to other games. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, every match that you play is a best of 3. And every round is in itself very short. Every round has a 2 minutes timer.
Yeah.
When those 2 minutes are up, the arena shrinks. You have the circle that gets closer to the center. And when you're outside the circle, you take damage. So basically, it forces you to get closer together with your enemies. It forces you to fight until somebody dies in the end.
Well, that makes the games pretty spammable, right? Which is actually good. On the one side, you think, spammable games, does it have any quality or what? But actually, those 2 minutes are extremely long if you play it.
Yeah, especially because it's just focused action. It's action, action, action. There's no moment where you can take a break, where you can, where you go to farm, where you go to retreat. It just doesn't really exist in this game. It's constant action. You're constantly clashing with your enemies. That makes it very, very intense, these couple of minutes.
Yeah, right. Perfect. Since you mentioned that this game is based on 2 versus 2 or 3 versus 3 setup, this gives a lot of room for individual impact, right? Compared to other games again. Tell us something about that.
Yeah, just like we said before, because it's either teams of 2 or 3. Let's go with the 2v2 setup in this example. That means that you make up 50% of the team. You have a great impact on your team's performance. Let's go back to the examples of Dota or League of Legends. You're not one of 5, where you, for example, take the support position, where you're very often just running around the map, placing wards here and there, occasionally supporting your team. No. First of all, it's just you're the other half of a team, which means that your impact is very big, but also when you're supporting, you have like direct impact on your teammate as well. If you don't heal and your teammate is totally going into the clash, fighting 1v2 at that point because you're outside healing, you need to be there. You need to know what you're doing. You need to help this guy. You can also, dish out damage. You can crowd control at the same time if you're playing a support. Or if you say, I'm maining a damage dealer, it's you who goes out there and does all the damage. So it's really up to you. Your impact is huge in this one. And I think this fact combined with the fact that the rounds are rather short and spammable. If you're playing this competitively, which you can, there's a ladder system in the game. And if you're playing well, you can rank up quite quickly, which is also very addictive.
Yeah, which is actually a good thing, to be honest. It's not a bad thing.
No, it's a great thing if you compare to other games where a matches take an hour or two.
Yeah, it is eating up your day,
Yeah, it's eating up your day. You play one match and like I said, you spend 1 hour on it, maybe you gain points because you win, maybe you lose. Maybe you get to play 2 or 3 rounds, but that's it. But in the same amount of time, you could play 10 or 20 matches of Battlerite, and you could have a huge impact on your spot in the ladder.
Totally. So, I think we summed up the gameplay part so far. Let's hop over to the pros and cons part. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do that.
So, what do you think is extremely great about this game?
Well, I think the first thing I want to mention, I think again, because we've talked about it quite a few times, but it's just that the game is just so incredibly reliant on your player skill. It's really up to you. Like you said, there's not really an OP hero. There's nothing like a one-man army hero where you can just pick and insta-win. It's really down to you. It's how good are you at this game? How well can you aim your shots? How good is your timing? How good is your cooldown management of your skills? And all these kind of things just factor in how well you're performing. And if you perform well, you go up the ladder. If you perform not so well, maybe you stay where you are, you go down. Yeah. But for me, it's the rewarding and kind of comforting thing about that. It's not about abusing game mechanics or abusing a certain meta or abusing that the heroes are unbalanced.
Yeah.
It's really just about your skill, and that just makes it really, really fun to play.
And the game is giving you a lot of feedback. If you perform bad, you almost instantly know it. That means if you just failed your shot and that leads to being focused from the opponents, you getting focused because you use your escape too early. That's what I think is one of the best things I've ever encountered in games like this, in skill-based games like this. Because in other games, you just have to play the whole round, and at the last 10-15 minutes, you realize, okay, somehow we're gonna lose now. But half an hour before, you just try to accomplish a certain position in the game, But in Battlerite, you instantly know what's the case with yourself, with your skill.
Because in other games, you work towards a larger objective, which you can reach very often through different means. So if you take a classic MOBA, it's because you go for different strategies. You either go for pushing the lanes, or you go for team fights, or you go through out-leveling your opponents. But none of these mechanics exist here. Here it's really just down to your skill in the team fights, because this is the only thing that matters in this game.
You mentioned that before. It's also a pretty big pro. This game is extremely eligible to being played competitively. That means no advantages through levels, items, or there are no pay-to-win mechanisms or something like that. It's actually basically, as already mentioned before, broken down on your skill. And that's why the heroes also feel pretty unique. And we also mentioned that before, that they are actually pretty interesting to play, all of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
The balance is, in my opinion, pretty good, to be honest, compared to other games. I compare it to Overwatch, to be honest. When I started playing Overwatch, most of the heroes were pretty balanced. Right now, of course, the community is getting into it, and there are some tweaks and stuff, and that's also the case with Battlerite. But I have to say, and we mentioned that also before, that you can accomplish a win with any hero. And when we are talking about balance patches, there's actually also pretty good feedback from the developers who are putting out these balance patches pretty regularly. But I have to say it's not frequently. Take their time. I don't want to call this a con or something. It's still a pro because we are doing it. You see there is something happening. It could be a bit more, but I don't know if that's the intention of them or not.
No, I think that the way the balance patches are rolling out at the moment, I think is sufficient. I don't think it's, not enough that you're waiting too long for something to happen. I don't think it's too frequent. I think they're sort of in the sweet spot. And even if the balance patches, to your tastes are not coming quick enough, or content patches or whatever, what they still have is they have their weekly developer update in their blog, right? So even if something isn't coming right away, they'll at least tell you what they're working on, which is already quite comforting if you bought into the early access. You know that that they're you know that they're working on their game, you know that they're working on improvements.
And that's the most important thing about an early access game. You paid money for it. Of course, it's just $15 in this case, but still, we are looking at DayZ again and what happened with that. And that's actually pretty frustrating. Still frustrating. I'm probably going to mention it in other podcasts again if we are going to make some reviews about early access games.
You're really pissed off about that.
I'm really pissed off about this, seriously. It's something refreshing to see that developers are giving feedback, that they are putting out these patches because you are expecting something like this. Even if the game is going to fail afterwards, this makes the money you put in worth it. Because at the end, you are some kind of an investor, you know? You want to see something. You want to see something happening.
And look, if you just look at the past months, if you just look at the point when we picked up the game, we started playing this December last year. And remember when we started back then complaining about the visual appearance of the game, that the user interface wasn't up to snuff, that looked very unappealing to, it didn't look that nice. The hero design is quirky in itself. So it kind of comes down to taste if you like it or not. But the problem wasn't quite the hero design itself, was just the models weren't that nice, at that time at least. So December when we started playing it, we looked at the models like, I'm not quite sure which one I'm supposed to pick. They all kind of look crap, to be honest, right? But they've changed a lot of that. So in the last couple of months, they've updated so many of the hero models. I think with the last patch, there was about 8 of them that got a facelift. And they look great now.
Literally a facelift, right? And especially anatomical changes. Like we changed the Baku, for example, those thin legs, and he's a tank. He's a bulky hero, and those thin legs got changed into some bulkier legs, which is pretty nice to see because you realize think about things like this, and which is also pretty nice about this game. You mentioned that before, that you don't need like 5 to 6 to 10 players or friends to match up and have a good time.
I love that about this game because it's so often so difficult to get, all your friends together to group up. Even if you have 5 or 6 friends that play the same game as you, they don't always have time at the same day or the same evening. So very often you're left with half a group. And here it's so easy because you only need one more friend to play online and you have a full team. That means if you want to play it more competitively, even if you want to take part in tournaments, if you feel like doing that, it's so easy. Just get a second person. And there you go. You have a full team. You can go and play the game.
And keep rocking. Yeah. So far, so good. What's not so great about this game?
This is not really something that's not so great about this game, but just something which I think might not be so healthy for this game is, as we've described before, it's kind of a niche genre, right? We've compared it to MOBAs, also saying it's not really a MOBA, and I think people may have trouble either understanding that, maybe because it doesn't offer so much variation in gameplay, that they think it's boring after a short amount of time.
Yeah, and I can totally understand that because, a lot of people are playing Dota for the heroes because we find the heroes interesting, especially in Heroes of the Storm. A lot of people are playing them because we're playing those heroes in World of Warcraft. And we want to play Illidan in Heroes of the Storm. That's why I say it's totally understandable. On the other side, we try to counter it, right? With these game modes, with these brawl game modes, to spice the things up a bit.
Exactly. See, the problem, I think, is not just with the appeal of the heroes. I think it's also for some people, there might be the lack of strategy. We discussed it earlier that with Heroes of the Storm or Dota, you can go for push strats, or you can go for jungle strats, or you can go for, all these kind of different, really in-depth strategies that you don't really quite have here. Everything here is much more tactical, it's much more short-term because the rounds are super quick and there's nothing to do besides fighting. And maybe for some people that's not so appealing, but for people who enjoy the aspect of team fighting the most in MOBAs, this is a perfect game for them.
Yeah. So we talked about matchmaking before. We find it pretty cool that the groups can be small and give you a large individual impact, and that the games are actually pretty short. But there is the fact that the matchmaking might somewhat feel wonky, although we kind of seem to have patched that. What do you think about that?
Well, just to explain the way it was before, sometimes when you play the game, especially when you're playing competitively, because then you can see which rank other people are in that you're playing against or
Tell
with.
us something about the ranking system in itself. How is it structured?
The ranking system is comparable to other games. So you have different leagues. You have Bronze League, Silver League, Diamond League, and so on, upwards to the top. And every one of those leagues is divided into 8 divisions. So, for example, it might be that you start out the game in Silver 8. So you have to work up your way to the top. So it means you go from Silver 8 to Silver 7, 6, and so on until you're at Silver 1. And when you cross that threshold, then you're in the Gold League Division 8. And again, you have to work your way up. And the problem with matchmaking so far was that sometimes there might be quite a big gap in these divisions, or sometimes even leagues of the players that you would be matched with. So let's just say you're a Gold 1 player. It could sometimes happen that you're matched with somebody who is Platinum 5 or somebody who is in Silver. There sometimes was a big gap, and that just threw off the chances of having a normal game. Because, either that happens on your side and you're with a player that's much more skilled than you or much less skilled than you, or you're playing against opponents who are basically way out of your league and you have no chance of winning. That can be frustrating. Like you said, they patched it, sort of. We didn't quite yet get to try this a whole lot. There is the option for strict matchmaking, where it really only finds players within your same league and division. That means that the matching times might be a bit longer, that you have to wait for a match to come around, maybe for a minute or two. But it also gives you a more balanced game, in theory.
Yeah, but if you just want to hop into the action, you can just leave the option out and start brawling, right?
Yeah, I mean, for most of the time, matchmaking is okay. It's not that every match is completely unbalanced.
Yeah.
That's not what we're saying. But it just sometimes happens that you're playing, like I said, against people that are way out of your league. And sometimes it happens that you play against those people repeatedly.
Well, sometimes it's something challenging to play against more skilled players, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If it's, if they're slightly more skilled than you, sure, it's a challenge and you might even win, and that feels absolutely fantastic. Mm-hmm. But when you have somebody who's just, way, way, way better than you and stomps you, and then you go back into matchmaking and it's the same players again and they stomp you one more time, that's not so much fun.
What I also wanted to mention is, and which is actually something that is really important for me, is the player base. It seems like it is decreasing. You can follow the Steam charts, the player base counts online, and that might be a problem for it for the future if we don't tackle it, like going free to play or whatever, releasing more heroes, releasing more stuff for the heroes, releasing more game modes or whatever. We all know what a game has to publish to stay fresh and attractive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, they are going to go free to play at some point. They haven't quite announced the date yet when. And we also saw it with the last patch that came out, the big summer patch, that actually quite a lot of players did come back to try that out because they introduced a new hero. They introduced the new questing system, that you have these daily quests comparable to Heroes of the Storm, where, you get rewards by doing certain things like playing 2 matches as a melee hero or just logging in daily, you get something. That already got quite a few players back. And if they do these kind of things a bit more frequently, hopefully in the future, hopefully the community first of all stays alive, and with the release of it going free to play, hopefully it gets much, much bigger. Mm-hmm. Because in my opinion, the game really deserves to be played by more people.
That's what I just wanted to say. This game deserves to be played much more by much more people. It is, in my opinion, although it's the con section, one of the best multiplayer games I've played so far. I don't say the best, but it's one of the best. I really love this game at the moment.
Exactly. It's one of the best just because we can't just stress it enough, because it really just goes down to your skill, right?
Luck is no excuse, it's pure skill.
There's no luck, there's nothing that's OP, there's no cheating in the sense of that, you click somebody and he gets damage and you didn't really have to work for it. No, you really have to work for your victories here, but when you win, it just feels so goddamn good.
Okay, I think we got it so far. What do you think? Or do you have anything more to say?
Like I said, I can't stress enough that I really absolutely enjoy it. And I do hope that more people are going to play it. And anybody who's listening who hasn't played it yet should definitely go out there and get it. It's, at the moment, still early access, means you have to pay for it, but it's, $13 or something? It's totally worth the investment.
Totally worth. All right, that's it so far, guys. Thanks for joining us again, and see you next time.